everyone. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Kelly, and today I wanted to make my video about the situation in Lebanon.
Give your heart and soul to me, and life will always be lovely all round.
Now, I do want to say that I am not personally from Lebanon. I want to first explain what my relationship to Lebanon is. So my mother's family is from Lebanon, so that makes me half Lebanese, ethnically. But I do live in the United States. I'm pretty much American as they come. Um, I have visited Lebanon once in 2017. My sister was dating a Lebanese man. My whole family flew out there to meet his family. We spent time in Beirut. We spent time in the mountains and the northern part of the country. As to my own family, I don't currently have any family there that's really close. Most of my really close family has moved and immigrated to the United States. But from my trip in 2017, I do have some friends that are still there. I've checked back in with them since everything started getting really crazy the last couple of weeks. They're all fine, thank goodness. But they also weren't in Beirut. They were in more of the mountainous area of Lebanon. So the information that I am getting about Lebanon really is coming more from people who are on the ground there. There are a few social media influencers that I follow who are Lebanese. One of the main influencers that I'm getting a lot of my information from is from Jessica Kahawati. Now, I'm not sure whether or not she was born in Lebanon or not, but she speaks the language. Her parents definitely are from Lebanon. She grew up a lot of her life in Australia. She kind of rose to fame from becoming Miss World Australia 2012. And since then, she's become a humanitarian. She travels all over the Middle East. She's helped out in the Syrian refugees, etc. And so a lot of her information that she's getting is from people and contacts she has from all over the Middle East. And she's been reposting a lot of other people's information who are on the ground level. So to begin, I want to dive into some of the political history of Lebanon. Now, again, I'm not an expert. I'm not Lebanese. This is Jessica Kahawati's summary of 50 years of history in a minute. Okay, so this is really macro level. Okay, so from my understanding, there was a civil war that took place in Lebanon approximately from the years of 1975 to 1990. Now, after the Civil War, there was an influx of cash from various parts of the world into Lebanon to kind of help them get back on track. During this time, there were some democratic elections, who knows how fair they were, that brought some political people into office, okay? And at that same time, of course, there was that cash influx. During that time, a lot of these politicians basically took a lot of the money for themselves. The top politicians in Lebanon are millionaires and billionaires. And the normal people don't even have electricity for 24 hours of the day, okay? So they definitely hoarded a lot of that cash. And then later on, they wouldn't step down to let a new, elected set of leaders come in. Okay, so there has been a lot of political unrest in Lebanon over the past several years. We see protests erupting all the time in Lebanon. There's a huge outcry among the people to get rid of the corrupt politicians, to have them step down, and they won't. I know it was very frustrating for a lot of Lebanese people was after this terror attack happened. The politicians who came out to say something, very little time was spent about talking about, oh, well, here are the victims of the situation. A lot of time was spent on saying, oh, the government had nothing to do with this, so don't even think that. We don't want your protesters out here. A lot of protesters, in fact, have hit the streets since then, still protesting the government and the government response to it. And what the government has responded with is basically putting tear gas and basically causing violence to the protesters after this insane terror attack. They're causing more violence to these peaceful protesters. Insane, absolutely insane. And I want to say one thing. Jessica made this very clear in some of her posts. She said, I want to answer as many questions about the situation in Lebanon as I can. And she said, one question that I've gotten a lot is, how is the Lebanese government helping with the victims of this crisis? And she, very tactfully said, this is a very reasonable question for someone to ask if you are from a first world country. But literally, if you're from Lebanon and you are asked this, you'll probably get like a response of like laughter, because that's just not what the government does. The government has literally done nothing to help the victims. And in fact, these Lebanese people have actually had to rely more on international organizations and countries coming in to give them any kind of relief whatsoever. There was this one remark that Jessica made about a well-known politician who came out to respond to the destruction hours after it happened with a full face of makeup and a designer t-shirt on. And it looked so bad. You have this disaster and you have to get all like prissy to go on the news. You can't talk to your own people, right after it happens. Insane, absolutely insane.
Today, not because you represent the voice of the majority of Lebanese people, because in fact you don't. For millions of Lebanese, you epitomise the nepotism and corruption of a ruling elite that has plunged this country into the pit of despair. I invite you on today as the leader of the biggest party in Parliament, with significant influence within the government, with oversight over the past decade of the energy portfolio, which has sucked up the equivalent of half of the national debt, and yet power not on for 20 hours a day. I invite you on to ask you whether you will accept personal and professional responsibility for today's crisis.
In fact, many people are so distrusting of the government in Lebanon that they've actually told the president of France, who came, and several other places, do not give money directly to the government. The people will never see it. Give it to these other organizations that are helping, because this just won't work. So what actually happened in Lebanon? What are the actual events that took place? Now, the official story that many news places are reporting, I'll give you an example. The New York Times said this. They say, a pair of explosions, the second much bigger than the first, struck the city of Beirut early Tuesday evening, killing at least 154 people, wounding more than 5,000, and causing widespread damage. Over 1,000 people have been hospitalized, and 120 were still in critical condition on Friday, according to Lebanon's health minister, Hamad Hassan. Now, that is the official story, but that is very different to what a lot of people are saying happened on the ground. Okay, so the official story says that there was a fire and 2 explosions, okay? So this fire is confirmed by the people on the ground. I'll show you a clip right here.
Hi, this next one, she does the sound effect. In Beirut, airport. I mean, not airport, port, airport.
هيدا الصوت شحرة فوت عماد فوت يا ماما إيه يا ماما يلا عماد فوت بليز فوت بليز.
During that clip, these people are hearing a sound. Now, you can't really hear it too well on the video, but this second video, this was a man who ended up being a victim of the second blast. But he was very clear as to what he saw and exactly what was causing the explosion.
من شي دقيقة صار في إطلاق، بالأحرى الطيارة عملت خارتين نحن بمرفق بيروت تأذينا منه. صار هلا طيارة عملت غارة، رجعت طيارة تانية عملت غارة تانية ببيروت. نحن تأذينا منه صراحة. طيارة ضربت ببيروت والمرفق اتضرر. ما بعرف بالتفاصيل شو صايرة، ما بعرف بالضبط. من شي دقيقة صار في إطلاق بالأحرى.
So here he is saying that 2 planes came into the airspace, and it's not clear exactly what happened from then on. It's very possible that bombs were dropped from these planes. Jessica also posted on her story that Instagram was preventing her from posting the video where the man exclaims that there were 2 planes coming in to the vicinity right before the explosion. And basically they said that the reason for doing that was because it was a copyright claim. Now, this was not copyrighted. This was from a victim. There was no reason why this should have been blocked unless there was some kind of government intervention in Lebanon. And you might wonder at this point, okay, why does it matter? Why does it matter exactly whether or not it was like some explosives that were, put onto this port? Why does it matter if they're planes, yada, yada? Well, if they are planes, we instantly know that we are dealing with an entity that has a lot of money. So either it is a political group, a government, or a corporation with a lot of money, right? The government is going to want to kind of spin this on rebels or civilians who have a problem. I almost guarantee it, okay? There have been other people who have said, Israel spends a lot of time and money sending these planes over to Lebanon to basically spy on different things. We see it all the time. We know what it sounds like. It's not something new to us. So obviously, if it is a country like Israel who caused this destruction, that's huge. Like that is a world war waiting to happen. We have so many countries internationally that have their fingers in the Middle East. If that was an act of war on the part of Israel, could spell disaster. Who else could it be? Well, it could also be the government, the Lebanese government, who were faced with tons of protests within the last year, who maybe are trying to salvage more control, maybe hoping they'll get more money if their country, is, having issues from outside sources. Who knows? We don't know at this point. But I do want to mention something kind of sketchy that happened right after the blasts, okay? So right after the blasts, there were tons of countries and, first responder type groups who were trying to get onto the location to help out, to do a search party, look for anyone who might have been, buried among the rubble, so on. And the Lebanese government would not allow pretty much anyone in for like the first 5 days of after this explosion. And you may say, okay, well, why would that be? What kind of cause would they have for that? And you can only think, well, maybe they had something to hide. Maybe they were a part of this explosion. Maybe they knew what was happening and, were being paid off. You can speculate, but it's very strange, very strange. Another thing I wanted to add is there has been an outcry from the Lebanese people for there to be a independent investigation of what took place on the port. And the Lebanese government basically says that they will not allow a independent investigation to occur about this issue because it would obstruct the truth. It also makes you wonder if we have all these reports from people seeing and hearing planes. Now, I don't know how much money Lebanon has when it comes to being able to see exactly who's in their airspace. I don't know. But I just know in the United States, like we definitely have the technology to be able to see who's in the airspace. You know, so if there were planes, is it possible that the Lebanese government knew about it? Very possible. Now, I want to be clear before I read what I'm about to read that a lot of this is still up in the air as to what definitely happened or what didn't happen, okay? The actual facts of the matter are not black and white at this time. However, do I feel more inclined to believe the people on the ground and what they actually saw than the official story when you have so many different agendas at play? Yes, I do. Okay, so what I'm about to read, I've read before on my channel, but I just think it is so important when we're talking about, oh, could there be, more insidious players at play here to work with different agendas, okay? Now, I've talked a lot in, various readings of books that there are a lot of secret societies in the elite that, do a lot when it comes to business and other control tactics to get their fingers into, various governments and corporations, etc. Okay, and I think most people are kind of on board with that concept. We see lobbyists that those are more upfront. We've recently seen, certain pedophilia circles like that with Jeffrey Epstein and how many people are involved in those things. Like, there's a lot of conspiring that goes on behind closed doors, okay? So I want to be clear because I'm not too afraid to use the word conspiracy theory. I think that word is used a little bit too much because basically it just means, hey, some people at some point conspired to do something. We know that happens occasionally. Some of these conspiracy theories are completely off the wall, but other ones not so much, okay? So I am going to try to state my sources before I read this. So what I'm going to be reading is a letter by Albert Pike to Giuseppe Mazzini, and this was written in 1871. And I just want to mention, like, this letter has been authenticated by several institutions and museums worldwide. It is legitimate, okay? I recommend you look it up. Just literally write in Albert Pike letter to Giuseppe Mazzini in Google. You'll see what I mean. Do your own research. Don't just take my word for it, okay? But I am going to read it because there's some pretty crazy things that it foresees. And I want to mention, this letter was written in 1871. The First World War did not occur until 1914, okay? So this was way before this, okay? End quote. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agentur, or agents, of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. Now, obviously, those first two wars happened just as this Albert Pike said it would, okay? But there's a third war that hasn't happened yet that he's also predicting, and this was where it gets interesting when it, comes to this thing with Lebanon, okay? The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. The manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. End quote. Okay? That's a lot, okay? But it does predict that there would be a third world war that would have the foundation in the Middle East, okay? So we're seeing a lot of social unrest right now with the scare of, COVID-19, with, uproar of, protests all over the world. This now in Lebanon, people are distracted. People are very distracted. And the thing is like, this could be Israel. It could also be this secret society. This is a letter from an Illuminati member that was involved with the Freemasons during this time in the late 1800s, okay? And I mentioned a lot. I recommend guys going on my channel to my playlists, and I have an entire reading of the Atlantean Conspiracy. It's a really good book when it comes to explaining the secret societies and their foundational teachings that oftentimes stem from Luciferian satanic teachings, and just exactly how much influence they do actually have on this world. So I recommend going over there, checking out that book, checking out the reading. Just do the research for yourself, and I'll try to update you as we go along here as I can. So that's how I kind of wanted to conclude it. Again, we don't have all of the black and white information, but there are a lot of puzzle pieces that seem to be moving toward each other that may or may not be fitting together. And I just wanted to come out and mention them. And maybe you haven't seen all those things, and I wanted to just bring it to the forefront. And yeah, that's my video for today. Thanks guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next video.